So in this video here, we're going to be going over different strategies for solving equations with fractions. But first, let's quick review adding fractions using least common denominator method. This method works best when one of the denominators is a multiple of the other one. So that way when we go to do least common denominators, we're only changing one of the fractions. So in this case here, 12 is going to be the least common denominator. So we ask ourselves 4 times what makes 12? That's a times 3. So then we need to do 5 times 3. So now we have an equivalent fraction with 12 as the denominator. And for our other one there, 7 over 12 makes 7 over 12. Now when we add, we already know the new denominator will be a 12. And then our numerator, we just add the 2 up. 15 plus 7 makes 22. And there's our sum there. And we can still go ahead and reduce this if needed. Another strategy we need to remember to do is when our denominators are mutually prime. So neither one is a multiple of another, kind of like this 4 and 12 there. So in this case here, your best method is going to be multiply the diagonals. Will normally be the fastest way. So we're going to do a 1 times 5 makes 5, and a 3 times 2 makes 6, and now we're going to add those together. So 5 plus 6, and we can hold these numbers in our head. It's going to make 11, and then for the new denominator, we're going to do a 3 times 5 right there. Now, if you need to see this example, slow down a little bit. We'll have a link up here in the video. So here we go, solving with fractions. Okay, so we're just going to solve. We got a on the left over here, so we're going to want way a equals and then the value right there. So we do need to ask ourselves what's being done to a. Well, it's being subtracted by 5/12. So how do we undo that? Well, we add 5/12 to both sides. So on the left side, a minus 5/12 plus 5/12 is no more 5/12, just a. And now we need to do 1/6 plus 5/12. So here we go. This one here, because the 12 is a multiple of 6, we got one denominator, multiple of another, then it's the fastest way is going to be doing least common denominator. So 1 over 6, we're going to multiply by 2 to make it over 12. So multiply by 2 to make 2 over 12, and then we have the 5/12 there. Next up, just add the numerators. 2 plus 5 is going to make a 7 over common denominator of 12. All right, for this equation here, there is more than one way of going about solving it. I'm just going to be showing one way on this video here, and I know there are many others. So we do have an equation. Our variable's on the left, so at the bottom of our work, we should have the variable equals and then the value here. So the strategy we're going to do with this one is simplify first and then solve from there. So these two denominators are mutually prime, so we can just add up these two fractions. It's not that tricky. So we start by multiplying the diagonals, so that's going to be a b times 2 makes 2b, and then we have a 3 times b right here makes 3b, and we're going to add those together. So 2b plus 3b, that's going to make 5b's, and then for our denominator here, we're going to multiply the two denominators here. 3 times 2 makes 6, and it still equals 6. So now we're ready to think, what do I need to do to go from 5b over 6 to just plain old b? Well, b is being multiplied by 5 and divided by 6, so we need to undo that with a times 6 and a divide by 5. So we could be thinking multiply by reciprocal, and so we would multiply by 6/5 if we wanted to think that. That's another great way of thinking about it, but we'll just stick with this for now. So we take our 6, multiply by 6, and that makes 36, and then divided by 5. 5 doesn't go into 36 evenly, so we're just going to have 36 divided by 5. All right, for this example here, we have x over 2 plus 7/3 equals 29 over 6. So our variables on the left, so at the bottom of our page, this is the way we want it to look. Now, this might be a brand new strategy to you. It's called clearing the fractions. And so what we actually want to do is get rid of all the fractions, so that way we only have to work with whole numbers. So here we go. With this one here, we do need to identify the least common denominator between over 2, over 3, and over 6. So that least common denominator is 6. So we're going to multiply the whole thing, both sides, all three terms, by 6. So it's going to look like this. So here we go. This is going to be distributive property. So we're going to do 6 times x over 2. So that's going to be 6 times x over 2. And now we're going to do 6 times 7 over 3. Now with these, you don't actually do the multiplication. You just hold that there for now. You'll see why in a second. And last, we're going to do 6 times 29 over 6. 6 times 29 over 6. There we go. Next up, we're going to cancel or remove common factors. So over here, we have a 6 and a 2. Well, we can divide 2 out of both of those, and that leaves us with a 3 there. And then here, we can divide between the 6 and the 3. We can divide out a 3. So let's do that. Remove a factor of 3, leaving us with 2. And then over here, we have factors of 6 that we can remove. Both the 6's, they just undo each other. So now we can clean this up. So over here we have, the only thing that's left is a 3 times x, so there we go. And then we got a plus, and then 2 times 7 makes 14. And then over here, the 6's canceled out or were removed or divided out, so we're just left with a 29. So now we have no more fractions. It's just a regular old two-step equation. By now we should be able to do those in our head. If not, we'll have a link up here and you can go back and review that. So we need to go from 3x plus 14 to just plain old x. So we need to undo the 14 and the 3. So we're going to subtract 14 from 29, and that's going to make 15. And then divide by 3 is going to make 5. All right, so with this equation here, we got a lot of fractions here, but don't freak out. We're going to be using clearing the fractions, where we actually, in air quotes, get rid of the fractions. Okay, so we do have our variable on the left. So at the bottom of our work, our scratch paper, we'll have y equals and then the value right there. Now with clearing the fractions strategies, we start by multiplying by the least common denominator. So between the 3, the 15, and the 5, the least common denominator between those ones is 15. So we're going to multiply 15 to both sides of the equal sign. We're going to multiply, distribute to all 3 terms. So here we go. 15 times y over 3 makes 15 times y over 3. And next we have 15 times 22 fifteenths equals 15 times 22 over 15ths. Now again, we don't multiply these out. We want to wait for that. You'll see why in a second if you don't already know. Last up, we got 15 times negative 1/5. 15 times negative 1/5. Now what we can do is we can cancel or remove common factors. So over here we have a common factor of 3. So we're going to remove a factor of 3 or divide out a 3. So that leaves us with a 5 there. Over here we have factors of 15 that we can divide out, and those both go bye-bye. And then over here we have a factor of 5 that we can remove from both the numerator and denominator, and that's going to leave us with a 3. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and clean up our work and see what we got left. So we got a 5 times y remaining, 5y plus. Now the 15s were both removed, so we're just left with a plus 22. And then over here, the 5 was removed with a 5 here, leaving us with a negative. Don't forget about this negative. And then a 3 times 1 makes negative 3. Now we have a regular old two-step equation. We want to go from 5y plus 22 to just plain old y. So we need to undo the plus 22 and the times by 5. We'll do that with a minus 22 and a divide by 5. So start with negative 3, divide or subtract negative 22 makes negative 25, and then divided by 5 will be a negative, and then 25 divided by 5 makes 5. Now we do have a shorter way of doing this if you want to use all mental arithmetic here. So identify that that's a 15 that we're multiplying by, so that's the least common denominator. So for this guy right here, it comes from the y over 3. Least common denominator was 15, so we're going to do 15 divided by 3 makes 5, y. Now we're going to do 15 divided by 15 here, and that just makes 1 times 22. And then here we're going to do 15 divided by 5 makes 3. So we got negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And then you can just solve it the normal way. So here's what the whole thing looked like. And as you can see, whether you do this middle step or you do it in your brain, you can still end up with this same part here. So again, our new strategy was clearing the fractions. Now we can still do add like terms, we can simplify, we can subtract a fraction to both sides, because we could have done a subtract 22 fifteenths over to this side if we wanted to, but clearing the fractions is, for most parts, going to be the fastest, most effective way of solving these types of equations.